Welcome to Photoshop in 5, a series of quick, super short Photoshop tutorials helping you learn new tools in Photoshop and stretch your digital savvy. And so in today's tutorial, we're going to learn how to clip several different pattern papers into the same digital stamp or cut file. I'm going to use a digital stamp. This one is from the Tracy Reed Designs Sunkissed collection. It's a rainbow shaped digital stamp. And so what I'm going to do first is open up a new canvas in Photoshop. I'm working in a traveler's notebook size canvas, so I'm going to open an 8.5 by 11 blank canvas here, and then I'm going to create the working space for the layout. And so this is 8.5 inches wide by 8.25 inches high. So measure your layout size and open that canvas according to the size that you're working with. And then once I have that rectangle placed, I'm going to center it on the page and go ahead and add the guides in the center, both horizontally and vertically on the page as well, so that I get things pretty much centered. And one of the reasons why I'm doing that is because I'm going to layer some of the elements on top of the tie-dye background paper, and so I want to make sure that they're lining up and they get cut from that pattern paper in the right place. So once you have all that set up, you're ready to start adding your elements. And I've already opened up all of the pattern papers and the photos that I'm going to use for this layout. But the other thing that you want to do if you're using a digital stamp is to go ahead and load your brushes into Photoshop. And actually, you're going to do this in the brush tool, and you'll see a little gear, and when you click on that, it says load new set of brushes. And so go into the digital folder that you downloaded from your designer and click the .abr file. And once you click that .abr file, it will load all of those brushes in. And so then again, in your brush tool, go and find where you have that ABR file that you want to use. And when you drag your cursor down, you'll see the outline of that brush, and that brush is going to place that image in whatever color you have in your color palette. I recommend black. I recommend black simply because if you're going to pull this into Silhouette, Silhouette recognizes black on white best for cutting. And then once you have you can also adjust the size of your brush a little bit using that slider menu, make it bigger or smaller. And that's one of the reasons I like using the digital stamps in this way, because you have a bit of control over how big you can make it. So just scale it to fit your page, whatever your page size is. And then you'll notice what I'm doing here is I got rid of the kind of sunburst shapes on the cut file, on the digital stamp itself. And that way, because I'm not going to use those on the other layers, I didn't use that part of the stamp at all. And so once you have your digital stamp placed, duplicate that layer for however many pattern papers that you're using, and then click on each layer one at a time. Turn all those layers off except for the layer that you're working in, and take your eraser tool and erase everything except for one element. And do that on all 4 of the layers. In my case, I was going to use 3 pattern papers plus a layer for the patterned heart and the photo heart. I didn't end up using the pattern heart, and that's okay. It didn't quite come to reality the way that I had planned to, but that's okay. You'll still get to see how I had incorporated that second heart originally to begin with. And you can see I'm just going in very carefully and erasing each element that I don't want and leaving a different bow on each layer. So if you're using 5 pattern papers, then you'll have 5 different layers. And I did use the tie-dye paper that I'm going to use is going to be on the background and also on one of the bows. So that's 1 pattern paper on my layout that's going to be repeated twice. And this takes a little time. Remember that you can always use your undo button if you made an oopsie. I really like the undo button, and also like try to be kind of organized about it, to go 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row. It makes it a little bit easier when you start bringing in your pattern papers. But the end result is you want each of these bows to be on a different layer. And then once you turn them all back on, you'll have all the layers in place. If something happens and you missed a layer, you can always bring that digital stamp back in and add it back in from there. So there are ways to correct mistakes if you make a few boo-boos here and there. I certainly did the first time that I went through this and was creating this. It was quite a process to get to the outcome. It was part of the creative journey for me, but definitely worth it. And it turned out really cute. I think that this helps to stretch these digital supplies a bit more, so you can use them over and over again in different ways. And so at this point you can see where I've got all the layers isolated and everything is all set, and we're ready to bring in the pattern papers. So there's a couple of ways to bring in the pattern papers. And first off, click on the bottommost layer. I've clicked on the background layer, and I'm going to duplicate this tie-dye pattern paper onto the background. And once I bring it in, the scale of that pattern paper is 12 by 12. And so I'm going to size it down just a little bit. I think it ended up being somewhere around 9 by 9 or 8.5 by 8.5 or something like that, just to match the scale of what you're working with. And I wanted these beautiful colors to show behind that rainbow. And so that's part of another reason why I sized these papers down. I also believe one of the reasons I love doing hybrid layouts like this is that you only have to print what you need. And so anything that you can do to reduce printing and reduce ink costs is a plus. So I also used this tie-dye paper on one of the bows. So I duplicated that layer and dragged it up on top of the layer that I wanted it on, and then right click on the pattern paper and click Create Clipping Mask, and that makes it show in the middle bow. And it also made it show, I duplicated it again and dragged it up to the top and clipped it over top of those 2 hearts. And so for now it also shows over the 2 hearts. There's 2 ways that you can bring your pattern papers in. You can drag that tab at the top of the page, at the top of the Photoshop layout, or you can right click on the layer itself in the pattern paper and click duplicate, and then arrow down to the page that you want it to go into. Either way, it helps to get that pattern paper into the layout that you want. and then slide it into place over top of the layer that you want to clip it to. Once you have it in the layout itself, size it down. I'm just using the move tool and clicking on the corner icon and dragging it. When you do that, make sure that you have the little link at the top of the page clicked so that your aspect ratio is maintained. And again, I'm just bringing all of those pattern papers down in scale just a little bit so that they all, you get a better feel for what that pattern actually is when it equals the scale that you're working in. And then the last step I'm going to do here is my photo. So I went in and already brightened and cropped this photo down to 3x4. It's still a bit big, obviously. So I'm going to go ahead and right click on it and create the clipping mask. And then I'm going to size it down even more to fit into this little tiny heart. It really turned out cute. I love those little hearts. It's one of the reasons I wanted to use this digital stamp for the purposes of this layout. And then I had to, of course, toggle it a little bit so that it showed at the bottom heart, and that that tie-dye paper didn't interfere with it. And so now when you turn off the tie-dye background paper, you can see that all of the rainbows have their own pattern paper. The photo is clipped to the heart, and this is now ready to be sent off to the silhouette to be cut out and assembled for the layout. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any Photoshop tips that you would like to hear about or tools you would like to know more about, comment down below and let me know, because I would love to create a tutorial just for you. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you back here again soon. Bye-bye.